Marines. The Last Scout Sniper Platoon, Part 3. Stand by for the evening prayer. Eternal Father, you who have granted your angels swords and your Marines rifles, listen to what you just heard in that room. Hope for the innocent, terror for the enemy, but only if the enemy is not me. That's the doctrine of the split mind spoken like scripture. The ego prays the same way, mighty companion. Divide the sonship, then call it peace. Call one group innocent, call one group condemned, and the killing becomes holy by default. That's how war sells itself as purpose. That's how identity gets forged in fire and fear. The priest means well, but he doesn't know he's blessing the ego's battlefield. Do not be afraid to do your job, he says, but he does not realize the ego wrote the job description. He does not realize the purpose he blesses is not God's purpose at all. Highly proficient killing machines, the Marine says, and everyone nods because the ego loves that phrase. The ego has never met a weapon it didn't want to baptize. But then the crack appears. God made me this way, so what do I do with it? No, God didn't make you that way. The ego did. And the split mind shows its seams right there in the middle of the barracks floor. I don't want to kill, but I feel like I need to kill to have purpose. That is the core wound of the world. Purpose fused to death. Identity fused to destruction, meaning fused to violence. This is not just the Marine Corps, this is the world's entire metaphysics under the microscope. The Scout Sniper Platoon gets disbanded, and suddenly the room fills with grief, rage, disorientation. Not because rifles are gone, but because identity is gone. What am I if not this role? What am I if not this brotherhood? What am I if not this purpose? The ego always welds identity to form. Strip the form and the ego screams for oxygen. They're taking away something beautiful, one Marine says, proving not that death is beautiful, but that belonging is. The beauty was in connection, not killing. The love was in brotherhood, not bullets. The ego tricks them by attaching brotherhood to violence, so to lose one means losing both. And that's why disbandment feels like death, because the ego insists they were the same thing all along. Then the commandant arrives, talking modernization, robotics, reconnaissance, precision, adversaries, budgets, sea lanes, prediction. But the metaphysics behind the speech is simple. Roles change, forms dissolve, identities end. The world is shifting, and the ego cannot stand shifting ground. The sniper role dissolves, and the Marines feel betrayed not by the core but by the collapse of self-image. Who am I now? That question is the beginning of awakening, and the ego hates awakening more than any enemy on a battlefield. The purpose was never the kill. The purpose was the identity built around the kill. When that identity is threatened, the ego panics like the world is ending, because for the ego it is. Then we move to the ship. Endless waiting, endless tension, endless craving for purpose. Snipers asking for trigger time because without the job the self feels hollow. That is metaphysical withdrawal, the identity losing its drug. Purpose addiction is the ego's strongest narcotic. Then the female XO, torn between her child and her command, the ego's perfect double bind. If she stays home, she betrays the job. If she deploys, she betrays the child. The ego crafts a world where all choices lead to guilt, guaranteeing nobody ever finds peace in form. Then Price, the Marine who raised his siblings, shielded them from violence, stepped in front of bottles, absorbed the blows. He didn't join the Marines to kill, he joined to survive. He joined to matter. He joined because the ego told him strength equals safety, violence equals control, the uniform equals belonging. But that is trauma's enlistment contract, written in fear, signed in childhood, sealed in guilt. He feels guilty for leaving his siblings, guilty for wanting structure, guilty for wanting out, guilty for wanting more. Guilt is the recruiter, purpose is the bait, Identity is the trap. Then Certex hits, the beach raid, the rubber boats, the chem lights, the misinformation, the chaos, the false reports. Recon says the beach is clear, but the beach is not clear. That is the mind in a single symbol. The ego gives false recon every day. Everything's fine, it says, while the enemy belief still lives inside. And because the belief is there, the enemy appears, even in simulation. Not because it exists, but because belief summons perception. Stress increases, identities tighten, roles activate, adrenaline floods, purpose snaps into place. But the deeper metaphysics is this: there is no enemy on the beach. There is only belief in enemies. And belief makes ghosts look real. The pilots face their own trial, impossible choices, lose-lose scenarios, the ego's specialty. The real test is never the mission. It's whether the mind can remain calm when the script collapses. Because the script always collapses, and when it does, what remains? Not the role, not the rifle, not the platoon, not the identity, only the mind itself, stripped of its disguise. And that is the real last, in the last Scout Sniper Platoon. Not the last snipers, but the last gasp of an identity built on war. When the platoon dissolves, the ego's grip cracks, and the chance to see differently finally appears. The final metaphysical truth is simple. There was never an enemy. There was never a threat. There was never a mission to kill. The only mission was to wake up. And the last Scout Sniper Platoon is not a tragedy. It is a symbol of the world running out of illusions to defend. The battlefield was never the beach, it was always the mind,